Hi everyone, my name is Ann Walsh and today I am launching a new series of mom stories for YouTube. And my first guest is Sarah Ann Atkinson, who I met years ago when I was looking for a really good Thai massage therapist for my husband who gets really bad backaches. And he loves Thai massage. It's just rough enough to really work at his knots. And and Sarah Ann came up, and it was like the rest is history. She was great, and he loved her work. But today I'm talking to Sarah Ann as a mom, and at the time you were not a mom yet.
No.
But I wanted to hear your mom's story. Sarah Ann and I stayed connected through Facebook, and so I've been able to follow along on your journey. And when I was writing the book about motherhood, one of the things I did was I met with 50 moms, well, over 50 that made it in the book. And the first thing that I would always say is imagine that you're sitting on a stage and that you have a room full of women and somebody out there needs to hear your story. What would you share with them? What do they need to hear about your story of motherhood that you think would be helpful?
Even just thinking about it, I kind of get a little misty-eyed, honestly. I think if I were to have to sum it down to 1, 2, 3 sentences, is that even if you have had a troubling childhood, even if you feel like you didn't have the greatest, most secure upbringing and struggled a lot with your own attachment in the world, and even if the marriage that you started things with didn't go the way that you planned or the way that you thought, that there's just so many compassionate opportunities as you become a parent to make the future that you really want for yourself and your child. And I've been so impressed by the resiliency of what leaning into learning through Mika's eyes has been. And that's my son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before you had Mika, what what did you imagine motherhood would be like?
I think that's like a two-parter, because first I never thought I wanted children. And then when I finally got to the point of wanting children, um, I knew that it would be a wild adventure. I knew that it would be taking him lots of places, giving him lots of experience and lots of choice, raising him up rather than trying to mute him down. That was like a big, when I think of how to be with a child, it's really just to play with them at their energy level, to keep them entertained with what their needs are, and to somehow get enough sleep every night to keep up with it.
Yes, the sleep,
So important.
it's so important, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so um, what changed? There was a change for you after you had Mika.
Yeah, so after having Mika, I'd say probably about, I had cesarean surgery, which was unplanned as well. I had wanted the hypnobirthing, the whole hippie experience of being at the birth center and water birth, and I'd been training all the beautiful meditative techniques. And as all mothers know, we can have an idea, we can have a plan, but things are just going to go the way that they go. So
Yes.
my healthy baby boy was born by cesarean, and it meant that I was healing from surgery, and a lot physically changed for me at that point.
Yes.
Dependency on others happened again. And then there was a lot of emotional difficulty about me sharing my experience with friends and family. When my partner went back to work at the time, feeling a little isolated. And I think I struggled a lot with postpartum depression and just didn't talk to people about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, it also led me to some relationship issues with my partner, and inevitably we did separate.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been the journey of co-parenting
Yes.
since just before Mika's first birthday. And now he's about 28, 29 months old.
Oh, oh, I love those days of counting the months. I remember that. I remember counting the months and all the way until I think 3 years. But yeah. And so what I got from what you were sharing on Facebook was that your son, even though it was kind of scary to be alone with him all of a sudden,
Mhm.
I sensed that he was a source of strength for you. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I can. Like I said earlier, just this idea of leaning into him, not leaning on him, but
Yeah.
leaning into where he's so present. Toddlers to that 2-year-old, 3-year-old stage, they
Yes.
can both throw a tantrum, but then like in 2, 3 seconds later, they're in the best mood of their life. And just about following, especially during a pandemic, is like following that, allowing my emotions to spread, to be what they need to be, to get more crafty more often, to learn that my house can be messier, but it's going to have happier memories.
Yes.
And to learn that self-sufficiency is something that I have so strongly felt in myself, like I can do this alone. And then I see him trying to put on his own winter boots, and it's like he does not want my help until he's ready for it. And I've been such a big like learning where he's leading me is that when he invites me in for that help, when he invites me in for support, it really lands, and I can see it. The times where maybe I'm wanting to cuddle with him on the couch, or I'm wanting these things from him, may not be available. He's running around for whichever. So knowing that my moods are short-lived,
Yes.
if I'm having a temper tantrum, allow myself to do it, but in a way that's maybe going to be really healthy modeling for him. So for instance, when we get real bad beans in the house, some of these like inside cold days, we throw on a dance party and we'll growl and we'll jump and we'll do all, and then afterwards, like I can tell both of our bodies and our minds are better.
Yeah. Yeah. You've made space. Let go of some energy.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about your support? Because I saw you reaching out, and I know that there were people there. Some people, there was some silence, and other people really came to be with you and see you in this journey that you were on. Can you speak a bit about that? This new kind of, it felt like you were changing to a new group of support.
Yeah, so there is obviously, since the pandemic's emerged, there's having to be very mindful of bubbles and what is considered people's safety. But then there's also different kinds of support, just late night phone calls or video chats, or just having someone hear your story. And I realized I have to get really clear in what it is that I need. If I don't even know what I need, when I'm out there searching and asking for it, I'm not going to be clear in how I'm asking, means that those people can't really show up for me. So even the folks who want to say yes and could, it's like, I need to first get super clear, like, oh, okay, am I needing emotional support? Am I needing someone physically here? Am I needing a break? And once I get clear on what that need is, knowing that I've even had to make a list so that when I get super stressed out, it's there and I can fall back on this list of who those people are and what they've offered to me in the past. Knowing that, like myself, I have an emotional capacity. Sometimes it's available and sometimes it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So I've started to see the people that I turn to, even if they may say no to me, it's the ones who are saying no in such a loving and caring way, like, no,
Right.
not now, but check in later, or no, and I see you really struggling, and can I maybe list some other names of support for you?
Yes.
Something. Versus the people that I think were just flat out saying no or non-responsive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to blame them or shame them or shut them down.
Right.
There just are some people that are not open and available or even compassionate to what I'm going through. They
Right.
may not be parents themselves. They may not have space to take care of others.
Mm-hmm.
And during a pandemic specifically, it's really hard to rely on people, as those bubbles have been asked by provinces and federally to just keep shrinking.
Yes.
So supports traditionally were things like baby groups or swim classes or gymnastics, where I have the relatability of other parents and other children and routine. And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of that's shifted and changed. So it's really been about refining, like getting clear in my asks, getting clear of who to ask,
Yes.
and making sure that those people are responding in a way that's fostering our relationship to continue to grow. So that may
Yes.
not be yes now, but they know that they're still my support network and they're
Yeah.
letting me know that.
Yeah. Great. Well, it's good that you have a list. I think that that point is so important, to know what it is that you need. Because
Mm.
if you just say, I need something, but you don't know what it is, it's really hard for people to respond. And sometimes they might give you something that's not at all what you need. And it's kind of awkward. So it's good to have that list and be clear in yourself, but for other people as well.
Because if I just say to people I'm overwhelmed or
Yes.
I'm whatever, they might respond with like a bunch of options for me, but I'm already overwhelmed and I can't
Yeah.
process those. So like I say, before I even put that out there, I've really had to think like, what is it that I truly need? And what's also the bare minimum and what's also the full ask?
Yes. 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 Also good to know. So what are some things that you do for self-care? For somebody watching this who is overwhelmed, what are a few tools that you use for self-care?
Well, I've been really grateful to practice a lot of meditation through the pandemic. A lot of great friends, and then inspired myself as well to put out some pre-recorded meditations. Been doing a lot of yoga, practicing nature walks, especially when it's nicer weather, trying to get out at least once or twice a day. Um, Even if I can't, sitting near a window, letting the sun shine on me. I have traditionally taken a bath a day, depending on if that's in the morning or evening. And I've tried to both reach out for support once a day, but also to offer my support once a day to someone. I feel like I gain a lot of sort of my burst of energy again by knowing that it's a whole community that I'm part of, and I'm not just receiving, I'm also giving.
Yes.
And then I guess the big thing through the pandemic is that I reinstated the happiness habits to try a 9-week journey with other people's mental health. So taking a responsibility beyond just my own and beyond money was really wanting to see what is it that are the daily habits that help people. So maybe those are making self-care lists.
Yes.
Maybe those are just taking mindful moments throughout the day. And mostly when it's the super 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 overwhelmed times where I'm like, oh, I've already surpassed that, I should have done it earlier, I make sure my son is somewhere safe. I might go and just like have maybe an angry dance party. And I've also been swimming a lot of laps, so getting in the pool, clearing my head with a bit of physical exercise. And I come back to the beginning of my interview where I said a good night's rest.
Yes.
There's not much else that I can bring to the table if I'm not getting those, may sound like a princess here, but it is a good 9 hours of sleep, and I function very well.
Yes. Yes. Sleep does wonders. It really does. And you don't really appreciate it until you're sleep deprived. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I miss sleep so much.
Yeah.
So tell me about your career, because your career has taken quite a few little turns too, and I have enjoyed watching you blossom.
It's becoming more of a career, I feel like. So initially it was just that I personally had a life of chronic pain and my own mental health that I wanted to get more into yoga. So I took my yoga teacher training. And so part-time I started being a yoga teacher. And then prior to that was that I'd taken my Thai massage training, and I started doing that part-time, maybe working out of cafes, till I realized one day that like I had to make my own schedule. And this was long before Mika came along. It was just realizing to pace myself, to honor myself. I started getting into acrobatic yoga, acro yoga, and my ex-partner and I at the time were leading workshops and classes together. And way more recently, through the beginning of the pandemic, have discovered a practice called somatic sex education. And even though it has the word sex in it, which I know is like one of those taboo subjects, sex, money, and death or whatever, but I'm a person who loves the taboo. I've really enjoyed that it brings about these emotional embodiment practices. Like I said, I've maybe had a bit of a troubled childhood, and my nervous system has gone through a lot between that, post-concussion syndrome, 14 concussions in my life.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I've done a lot of personal work on my nervous system. And then I realized by doing that, I'm showing up as a better friend, as a better mother, as a better employer, like business owner. And then I'm now bringing this into practice with clients with coaching. Because I think by bringing our nervous system to a place of being able to be present, we're then able to exert better boundaries, know what our desires are, name our fears and dissipate them, and able to connect with people more authentically. So that's kind of the new path that it's taken
Cool. That
recently.
sounds really fascinating. And so,
It literally makes me have like full body yes feelings all the time. So I know I'm doing the right thing.
is that what you were doing last night? I saw you had classes last night.
Oh, class last night is my other like pet project. So when I came to the yoga teaching world, everyone has to have like, what's their niche? Are you going to be an Ashtanga teacher? Are you going to teach Hatha flow? I'm like, I don't know. I kind of want to teach naked yoga.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yes.
So that's my thing is the in-person classes were all about developing safe spaces to experience our naked selves that are not for sexual purposes. They're not for other people's purposes. And it's for non-attachment to the stories that we all inevitably carry, whether it's that we think that little bit of extra something on our hips or the way that our jawline, like yoga is that perfect place to be cultivating the practice of letting go those stories and realizing that it's about how we move and live in our bodies and not what our bodies are.
Yes. Yes. It sounds so freeing. When I was looking at your brochures and different posts that you had, I was just like, oh, she's into this now. This is fascinating because we don't live in the same area, but it sounds really interesting. And at one point it was cold and you were talking about the beach and I was like, oh my gosh, you have to be pretty brave.
I also feel like this year I'm going to be doing a polar bear swim. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but yeah, just shaking things up.
Yeah, that's great. And so how old is your son now? You said 30.
So it's August, September, October, November, December, 24, 25, 26, 27. Yeah, 28 months.
28 months.
28
And
months.
so what would you say to an earlier version of yourself when you just had Mika and you were terrified of, being alone and raising him alone and what that was going to mean? What would you say to that earlier version of yourself now, looking back?
That things may seem totally impossible. Like you never know when you're going to get another night's sleep, or you never know when you're going to have space for your own desires again in your life. Like all life changes. The only consistent thing is change. And I guess to remind myself that to look at the whole picture of my life is resiliency. And so even if I do get stuck in those little dark moments, those difficult times, and even though at the time, not only I felt personal shame for asking for support, but I think what also troubled me at that time was I was receiving shame from people for asking for support.
Mm-hmm.
And I want others to know, I want my past self to know that that's about them. That's not about you. Like asking for support and help is the single most strongest supportive thing that you can do for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And don't think that you won't be able to someday give that back to another mama, another sister, another someone. So let yourself take, like, whatever you need to do to allow yourself to take support rather than always be the one giving, because inevitably it does lift you up to be able to show up as the person you want to be.
Yes. Yes. So what's the next chapter for you? What's next?
Well, navigating my separation on paper, probably figuring out where I live next, whether that be in Ottawa or wherever, and continuing to be a guide of love for my son in this time, specifically the pandemic, is that I see people operating from two places, from fear or from love. We can still respect the boundaries and the safety that needs to exist, but shift ourselves to operating from love. You know, if you're going to be wearing masks or going out to public spaces or visiting, still doing the things that are safe, but not doing them out of fear. And modeling that for my son is going forward, that if I'm going to reach for my dreams, I'm going to keep doing more training with the Somatic-sex Institute, Education Institute. And the type of workshops and events that I'm continuing to host are about behavior modeling. Some of these things that maybe people have never gotten to see, because a lot of the media that we consume on TV is about how relationships don't work, or how sex is always not so great, or how dream fulfillment is for later in life. Like, I want to start creating experiences that are modeling and safe spaces for play. That it's not about getting it right. It's about allowing ourselves to learn and grow together. So community, playing, operating from love, that's what's next for me.
That's exciting. That sounds like a wonderful next chapter. If anybody's watching this and they're interested in following you and joining your community, where should they go?
So I have a couple links to share. My website is blissyogaottawa.com. That's going to direct you through like anything that you want to follow me. I'm also on Instagram. I think it's at Bliss Ottawa. And then the naked yoga is bear.bliss. Thai massage and yoga bookings all go through my website. So just all that information should be there.
All right. I'll link it to our interview.
Yeah, I'll send it to you in a message.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Sarah Ann, for sharing your journey with me today.
And thank you, Anne, for asking me to be a part of this. I know at first when you're like, hey, do you want to be interviewed on parenting during a pandemic? And I was like, sure, I don't know what I'll say, but it was very great to connect with you again. I've loved getting to meet you and your family and seeing how you show up in the world. And thank you for bringing these messages to the public.
Thank you. Have a great day, Sarah.
You as well. Thanks.